I'm here with Alexander Mercouris, editor-in-chief of the Duran. Alexander, let's get into Judicial Watch. Freedom of Information Act requests that they made in September, middle to late September. And those documents, we've been going through those documents for a while now, but we didn't really report on this because there wasn't much going on, much information coming out with the Obama White House and the meetings with Chalupa and Ukraine and all that stuff. But with the video we did recently, with the story via Sarah Carter, and the video we did which details the 27 meetings between Chalupa and a variety of people in the Obama White House, we thought it's a good time to really dig into this Judicial Watch Freedom of Information Act request and the documents that they presented and that they published. Alexander, bear with me. This is an astonishing story, guys. Bear with me. I'm going to read you what I think is the most important part of this post via Judicial Watch, actually a press release. I'll put the link in the description box down below, and then you can comment down on Alexander. So here we go. The documents obtained by Judicial Watch in a Freedom of Information Act lawsuit show that from May 2014 to November 2015, Steele filed dozens of reports with his close associate at State, Special Coordinator for Libya, Jonathan Weiner, who would then pass them to Assistant Secretary of State, Victoria Nuland. The reports focused mainly on the Russia-Ukraine crisis and U.S. sanctions on Russia. The documents show that Steele's work was distributed to State Department Coordinator for Sanctions Policy, Daniel Fried, and Principal Deputy Assistant Secretary Paul Jones, whose focus in the Bureau of European and Eurasian Affairs was on Russia and Ukraine policy. The documents are Orbis business intelligence reports that Steele provided to the State Department. Steele, a former MI6 spy, co-founded Orbis in 2009. Judicial Watch obtained the documents in a FOIA lawsuit filed on April 25, 2018 on behalf of itself and the Daily Caller News Foundation against the State Department after State failed to respond to 3 separate FOIA requests. The lawsuit seeks, this is the important part, Alexander. Number 1, all records of communications between State Department officials, including former Secretary of State John Kerry, former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, and Assistant Secretary of State Victoria Nuland, on the one hand, and British national Christopher Steele and other employees or contractors of Steele's company Orbis Business Intelligence on the other hand. Number 2, all records and or memoranda provided by Christopher Steele and or his firm Orbis Business Intelligence or by others acting on Steele's Orbis behalf, the State Department officials. Number 3, any and all records in the custody of the State Department related to the provision of documents to British national Christopher Steele and or his firm Orbis Business Intelligence, or the receipt of documents from Steele or his firm. Time period is January 20, 2009 through the present. And finally, Alexander, all records created in 2006 by Jonathan M. Weiner related to research compiled by Christopher Steele. That's the end, Alexander. Christopher Steele, these documents clearly show that Christopher Steele and his firm Orbis, this UK-based intelligence consulting firm, were deeply connected to the U.S. State Department, to Kerry, Victoria Nuland, and Hillary Clinton at a time of the Maidan coup in 2014, 2015. Alexander, what do you make of this?
This is an astonishing story, and the reason it hasn't been more widely reported or commented upon is partly obviously because there's an information blockade on it. You're not going to read about this in the New York Times or the Washington Post. You're not going to hear about it in CNN or MSNBC. But the other reason why it hasn't even been covered very much on alternative media or even on sites like us is because of the way in which Ukraine Gate has basically drawn all the reporting energy away from the subject matter of the origins of Russiagate. So the result is we're all talking about nonsense about what Bill Taylor heard from Ambassador Sondland, who may have spoken to, I don't know, Colonel Vinland or whatever it is, about a conversation between Trump and Zelensky that none of them are really very well informed about. And instead of focusing on these revelations obtained by Judicial Watch, which relate to actual State Department documents. Now, let's just go back in time and remind ourselves who Christopher Steele is. Christopher Steele is a former MI6 officer. He was formerly the agent in residence, the MI6 agent in residence in Moscow in the early 1990s. He was then brought over to London. He then transferred to London, where he seems to have been in some responsible position in MI6. MI6 is the British intelligence agency, the same organisation that James Bond, by the way, is supposed to work for. But anyway, Christopher Steele has some very senior role in the Russian desk of MI6. He is their key expert on Russian policy. He is the man also who who apparently compiled all the information that MI6 used in identifying the Russians as the supposed murderers of Alexander Litvinenko, the Russian agent who died with, from polonium poisoning in London in 2006. So this is a person who's got an important backstory. Now, the reason he is interesting is that in 2015, he was contacted or commissioned by Fusion GPS and Glenn Simpson, this entity that was ultimately, this company that was ultimately working, as we now know, for the Democratic National Committee and for the Hillary Clinton campaign to research and investigate Donald Trump, who was at that time a candidate for the US presidency, and who first won the Republican Party's nomination in 2016, and who was ultimately elected president at the end of 2016, in November 2016. So Glenn Simpson, Fusion GPS, the Hillary Clinton campaign, and the DNC were all employing this man, Christopher Steele. Christopher Steele, the same person, as I said, with this long backstory with MI6. By this point, Christopher Steele is no longer working formally for MI6. He's set up his own company, his own supposed research company, which is Orbis, which is based in London, which is providing all this intelligence. It's a sort of private intelligence agency that he himself is leading, and which supposedly specializes on Russian affairs. Now, Christopher Steele is the person who produces, whilst working for the DNC and for Glenn Simpson and for Fusion GPS and for the Hillary Clinton campaign, the so-called Steele dossier. This is the dossier which was, as we now know, the foundation of the whole Russiagate conspiracy theory hoax. This was the dossier that alleged that the Russians had dirt on Donald Trump, that they'd filmed him cavorting with prostitutes in a hotel in Moscow, that they had all this blackmail material on him, that he was essentially their agent, and it details at incredible length and in incredible detail the collusion that is supposed to have happened between the Russians and the Donald Trump campaign. We now know that the US intelligence community, people like John Brennan at the CIA, people like James Comey at the FBI, took all this nonsense that Steele was producing seriously, and that they were using this dossier that Steele had produced to carry out surveillance of people involved in the Donald Trump campaign, people like Carter Page and George Papadopoulos. And on top of all of that, we also know that it was used, Christopher Steele himself was used to smear Donald Trump in the media. He was actually talking to the media and telling them stories about Donald Trump. That's a long introduction about Christopher Steele, but it's important to understand who he is. And what do we now find as a result of Judicial Watch? We now find that Christopher Steele, this very same man, is incredibly involved in 2014 and 2015, passing report after report after report to the Obama State Department about things that were supposedly going on in Ukraine. And, you have a report which he sends via this man, Weiner, on the 13th of June 2014. You have two more reports, which he sends on the 1st of July 2014. You have another report, which he sends on the 11th of July 2014. You have more reports from him on July 17th, 2014. Another report on the 18th of July 2014. A further report on the 1st of August 2014. Three reports sent from Steele to the State Department on 29th August 2014, a further report forwarded directly to Victoria Nuland, who is Assistant Secretary of State for European Affairs, on 29th August 2014, reports on 11th September 2014, reports on 20th October 2014, on 3rd November, on 7th November, on 6th December, on 11th December, on 12th January 2015, on 16th February 2016, and it goes on and on and on, all the way. The very last one that he's sending at this time is apparent, that's covered in this Information Act request, is dates from 5th November 2015. 5th November 2015 is, of course, after Donald Trump has announced his candidacy for President of the United States. So we have this massive interaction between Christopher Steele providing information. We haven't actually seen these reports he's providing, but a flood of reports from Christopher Steele about Ukraine, specifically about the Ukrainian conflict and about Russian policy and Russian behavior during the Ukraine conflict. And it's all going to Obama's people at the State Department, to people like Victoria Nuland, who was the person who played a key role in getting the Maidan events, the Maidan coup happened in February 2014. Another person who's on the receiving end of some of these reports is Jeffrey Pyatt, who is the US ambassador to Ukraine, who plays a key role in also in organizing the coup, the Maidan coup in Ukraine. And of course, it seems that this information spread all across the State Department bureaucracy, that some of these reports were reaching the National Security Council, and one of the people in the National, and one of the people who was also receiving information about these reports, as she's now admitted, is Fiona Hill, who was also employed in the National Security Council by Donald Trump. So we see this enormously strong connection already existing between Christopher Steele and the Obama-led, Democrat-controlled State Department of Hillary Clinton and John Kerry.
All right, here's what happened, Alexander, in my view. I'm on the Orbis website. Directors, Christopher Steele, Director and Joint Founder, Russia CIS, and Christopher Burrows, Director and Joint Founder, Rest of the World. That's on the Orbis website, guys. You can check it out. Yeah. I'll put a screenshot there so you can see it. Just go to the website and you'll see Christopher Steele is still there. Alexander, this is how I see it. They were working together.
Yeah.
Steele, Kerry, Clinton, the U.S. State Department in general, Victoria Nuland, since 2014. This guy,
Yes.
as you said, was just giving out reports and reports. 2016 rolls around. It's Hillary against Trump. 2015-16, it's Hillary against Trump. Hillary Clinton, Robbie Mook, Podesta's been documented, especially when Hillary Clinton lost. And even before that, how do we get to Trump? Let's concoct this whole Russia thing, Russiagate scandal. Who do we know that we've worked with before? Christopher Steele. They were already working together. They already have a relationship. And of course, this dovetails into Ukraine Gate as well. So they have a working relationship. It probably goes even further back, given the fact that, he was working with the guy, Miner, who was in charge of Libya. Let's not forget, we saw he died, Hillary Clinton and her little cackle when she murdered, essentially what was murdering Gaddafi. And, from Libya, you were running guns. Hillary Clinton was running guns into Syria. That's a whole nother story. But I think this relationship, runs very far and very deep. But there's no doubt that Hillary Clinton needed someone to create this dirt. And they had, at the minimum, a 3-4 year working relationship with Steele and Orbis. That's documented now. Good job on Judicial Watch, Tom Fenton, and Daily Caller, who was also involved with this. And this comes to my next quote, which I'm going to read you, and you can comment on this, Alexander. Yeah. This is from the Daily Caller News Foundation. Let's not forget, Daily Caller used to be, he's not the editor-in-chief anymore or running it, but he used to be run, actually I think it was started as well by Tucker Carlson, who's now at Fox News. I think he's moved on now. He's not involved with Daily Caller anymore officially, but let's not forget that he was one of the people instrumental in getting the Daily Caller up and running. So Alexander from the Daily Caller News Foundation, quote, "The more we dig, the more access we see the disgraced spy behind the ridiculous dossier had at state. And we're going to keep on digging until we learn just how deep this went," said Christopher Bedford, editor-in-chief of the Daily Caller News Foundation. Quote, "These documents show that Clinton spy, Christopher Steele, had an outsized influence at the Obama State Department that proved useful when the Clinton campaign needed help smearing Trump in 2016 and beyond," stated Judicial Watch President Tom Fenton. Interesting choice of words, Alexander.
Very, very interesting choice of words. But again, I invite people to look at the press statement from Judicial Watch. As I said, it actually dates from September, but we've only managed to get around to discussing it now. And the facts speak for themselves. And can I again stress, these are facts. It is not disputed now. It cannot be disputed that the Obama State Department, that the State Department run first by Hillary Clinton and then by Kerry, Secretary of State Kerry, had an exceptionally close connection to Christopher Steele. They absolutely knew who this man was. And you're quite right, by the way, to point out to the really strange fact that the person who Christopher Steele is apparently working most closely with is Jonathan Weiner, who is special coordinator for Libya, who would then apparently pass on these reports to Assistant Secretary of State Victoria Nuland. It seems bizarre, actually, that the person in charge of Libyan affairs should be receiving reports about Ukraine, but then that's obviously because that suggests the connection to Hillary Clinton, who was so connected and so interested in events in Libya. So you see, when we hear Christopher Steele spoken about as Clinton's spy, well, you have all this information. And as I said, it speaks for itself. The point to understand about Christopher Steele is he clearly didn't come out of nowhere. The State Department, the Democrats, the DNC, they all knew who he was. when they commissioned him to provide the dossier on Trump, they knew exactly what sort of a person they were working with. And I'm going to add something else, that all these massive reports he's providing to the State Department over the course of 2014 about Ukraine, 2014 and 2015, the State Department must have been paying for. He wouldn't have done this for free.
No
so
chance.
There is clearly an enormous amount of interconnection here. And I'm going to say something else. All this information shows the central relevance of Christopher Steele in the whole Ukraine conflict and in policy during the Ukraine conflict. Is it surprising, therefore, that we have Ukrainegate starting at exactly the moment when reports are starting to appear in the Daily Caller News Foundation and from Judicial Watch, which show Christopher Steele right at the center of Ukraine, of the whole Ukraine debacle, at the very time when William Barr and John Durham are asking questions about the Ukrainian role in starting Russiagate. I don't think it's any sort of coincidence at all. The Democrats, the Obama people, the State Department, the bureaucracy, they would all have known that this massive leak of information about Christopher Steele and Ukraine and Christopher Steele and the State Department was going to come out in September. And so, again, I can't help but think that the timing of that makes the timing of the start of Ukrainegate with this whistleblower complaint in August extremely interesting. I can't believe that's a coincidence.
All right, I've got some more comments as well as Alexander, but here's a quick question. We documented it in the video 27 times, Chalupa at the Obama White House.
Yeah.
Do you believe there's a Chalupa Steele connection as well that we haven't dug up yet?
Well,
with the Manafort stuff, all of this Chalupa Manafort to Steele, Victoria Nuland, you know, there's this whole gang of people, you know, in and around Ukraine, whether they're fishing to dig up dirt on Manafort, whether they're funneling information to Nuland. What do you think's going on there?
Well, first of all, can I just say, I mean, I don't know about any connection between Chalupa and Steele, but each Chalupa and Steele are talking to the same people. And I think this is an important thing to say. I mean, Chalupa, of course, is herself involved with the Democratic Party. But here we see Steele is involved with various people who support the Democrats in Obama's State Department. And these reports that Steele is sending, I mean, they're not, I don't believe they would have been limited to just the State Department. Presumably, they were being circulated, as I said, right across the US government, the Obama administration's bureaucracy. Definitely, I would have thought to the National Security Council. So who else read them? Did Obama? Probably. Did Joe Biden? I would have thought almost certainly, given how heavily involved Joe Biden was in affairs involving Ukraine. So all of these people, I mean, we're talking about a fairly small and tightly knit group of people, all of whom are continuously talking to each other. Bear in mind, for example, that when the situation arose where Christopher Steele needed to speak to people in the FBI during Russiagate, who was he talking to? He was talking to the FBI via Bruce Orr's wife, Bruce Orr being a senior official in the Justice Department, whose wife is herself a prominent Democrat and a Democrat electoral candidate backed by Hillary Clinton. You always come back to these connections. They're all there. So, of course, I am sure that someone like Chalupa would have known about Steele. She might not have known his name, but she would have known about his existence and the things he was reporting. And I am sure that Steele knew about Chalupa. I mean, they all know, or they all know either each other or people who know both of them.
Alexander, George Webb, who has a YouTube channel, has documented how Vidman was had a very lucrative weapons setup in Ukraine. In other words, part of his interest in keeping this Ukraine narrative going is the fact, and keeping the war going, is the fact that he's doing a lot of deals in Ukraine on the weapons side of things. Now, I can't confirm this, but it looks like George Webb has documented it very well. But the reason I'm bringing this up is because you mentioned Libya, and Judicial Watch mentioned Libya. Steele communicating with Libya. We know that from Libya they were moving weapons not only to Syria, but we also know a lot of weapons made their way into Ukraine as well.
Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely. This is also documented. So we know a lot of these weapons were going into Syria to destabilize Syria. They were going into Ukraine as well to funnel them into the war effort. Yes. With the East.
And there have been reports also, by the way, Alex, that weapons were from Ukraine were finding their way to the Middle East. Some of them, no doubt, laundered via Libya.
That's entirely
yeah, exactly.
What do you make of this? It seems to me that not only do you have an energy play with Biden, Hunter Biden, and we've documented this well, and Burisma and all of that. So you have people, these carpetbaggers that are coming in to, pillage, the profits from Ukraine energy. It seems to me that you have Hillary at State Department with Nuland and Vidman and all these people at state and the U.S. government also making money or in dealings with weapons floating around from Libya, which was destabilized, to Syria, to Ukraine, back to the Middle East, so on and so forth.
Yeah.
Well, what do you make of that?
I think it's entirely plausible. I mean, we know. I mean, it has been actually publicly documented that the CIA was sourcing vast amounts of arms in Eastern Europe in order to provide arms to the Kurdish militias in Syria. Now, that would only have been the absolute tip of the iceberg, because of course they weren't just providing arms to the militias in Syria, they were providing arms to all kinds of people in all sorts of places, and of course some really, frankly, rather dangerous people. The United States is known to have provided arms to various militant groups in Syria that were waging war on the Syrian government, and many of which had jihadi ideologies, and many of which ultimately became absorbed with the two major jihadi groups, Al-Qaeda and ISIS. So, I mean, all of this was going on a huge scale, and it beggars belief that Ukraine, which was a major center of the Soviet arms industries, did not have a role to play in all of this. All the more so given that Ukraine itself appears to have been heavily involved in supplying arms on its own account to all sorts of strange people around the world. I mean, in Africa, in southern Sudan, for example, in all sorts of places. So it seems to me that you have arms coming in from the United States into Ukraine. You have arms going out from Ukraine. You have arms going from all sorts of places in all kinds of directions. And one wonders whether anybody was able in the end to keep full track of it all, because this does look like a very, very dangerous play. But there we go. I mean, this is to some extent we're speculating, but it is well-founded speculation. And we come back to this question that you asked again. Why, of all the people in the State Department that Christopher Steele could have provided his reports to about Ukraine, was he providing his reports to Jonathan Weiner, who was the special coordinator for Libya?
Exactly.
I mean, it seems most weird. And then, Weiner would then pass them on to Assistant Secretary of State for European Affairs, Victoria Nuland. Why not directly to Nuland? Why not to somebody else closer to Nuland? It seems a very strange chain to follow. It doesn't make sense. And as I said, given the role, as you rightly say, that Libya was playing in acting as a source of weapons for people in, say, Syria, it does beg lots and lots of questions.
You always get down to these two countries. We say it again and again for the whole Russiagate, Ukrainegate hoax. It always starts with the UK and Ukraine.
Well, indeed, absolutely.
That's where it all went down. From Steele and Orbis to Ukraine and Nuland and the Maidan, and it all ends up with Biden and Clinton. There you go. Those names keep on popping up.
Of course they do. And can I just say something else? I would be very, very interested to see these reports that Christopher Steele was providing to the State Department in 2014 and 15 about Ukraine. I mean, if they are anything like as frankly flaky as the dossier he provided about Donald Trump, and if they are anything like as wrong as I believe the dossier he provided about the alleged Russian role in Litvinenko's death, and of course he also provided another completely wrong dossier about supposed Russian bribery in getting the World Cup. Well, what was he saying in these reports? If they were as flaky as that, then it seems to me that this man was exercising extraordinary influence over the Ukraine policy of the United States, providing information which I suspect wasn't really information at all.
Yeah, great job, Judicial Watch. Great job, Daily Caller.
Well, they've done marvelous things, and frankly, it deserves to have. It deserved to attract more attention than it has.
No, I mean, like you said, it's been a media blackout on issues like this, but I'm glad that we've had the time to go into this in depth and that we're sharing it with our viewers. I mean, real quick, Alexander, and we'll wrap it up. The main takeaway, I think, is, as far as I can tell, is don't be fooled by any of the lies from mainstream media or from Hillary Clinton herself. There is a long-standing relationship between Clinton and Steele that dates back to at least 2014.
Yes,
that's
indeed.
And documented now.
It's documented. I mean, as I said, we invite you just to see the press release from Judicial Watch. It's all there. It's all outlined in extraordinary detail. I mean, maybe not Christopher Steele and Hillary Clinton directly, but the State Department, of which Hillary Clinton had until very recently, just before, been Secretary of State. And these are all her officials. These are all people that she appointed. People like Victoria Nuland were in post when Hillary Clinton was there.
Yeah. All right. Alexander Mercouris, Editor-in-Chief of the Duran. Thank you very much. Guys, click that subscribe button, hit that like, hit that notifications bell to make sure you get notifications when we push out a new video. Check out Soundcloud and iTunes to get an audio copy of this video as well. And go to PayPal, Patreon, and subscribe star. Donate to us. Your donation is very much appreciated and helps keep us going. You'll find all those links in the description box down below. You'll also find links to BitChute. Check us out on BitChute. We post everything on BitChute. And go to Duran Video. It's still in development phase, but it's running really well. And we invite everyone to check out Duran Video, which is our own hosted video platform. We are going to fight all the censorship, Alexander, and also check us out on Telegram, where we post everything on Telegram. And of course, Alexander, Duran Shop, pick up merchandise.
Indeed, our wonderful Duran mugs, which you see here, our wonderful merchandise. These are two of my favorite mugs. This is the one with the emblem of the Russian Federation, such as you will find on the tableware in the Kremlin, which Vladimir Putin himself uses, and this one, which is the one I'm actually drinking tea from, which shows you the emblem of Alpha Force, which is Russia's elite special forces unit. Russia has many special forces units, but Alpha Force is possibly the best. It's the one that's done the most, shall we say, heroic deeds. So there we are. But they are wonderful 15-ounce porcelain mugs. I've been drinking tea from this one at the moment, a good Royal Blend tea. Royal Blend is a Fortnum and Mason's tea, a black tea, which keeps me warm on the cold autumn days that we're having in England now. So these beautiful mugs, complemented by these amazing shirts, 100% cotton. This is a marvelous polo shirt, as you could see. I absolutely love wearing it. My wife loves seeing me in it. You see here that we have the double-headed eagle of the Duran, which is not the same, by the way, as the double-headed eagle of the Russian Federation. You can see the difference. It's beautifully embroidered on. It's a symbol of the fact that we cover the media, the news, from all parts of the world, east and west, and we do so with the eye of the eagle. We keep an eye on everything. And of course, we got other shirts, not just polo shirts. We've also got T-shirts, short sleeve T-shirts, long sleeve T-shirts, hoodies, we've V-neck shirts, hats, stickers, amazing things. You can find them all in our shop. Our competitors are trying to copy us, but they're not producing merchandise of anything remotely like our quality. The feedback we're getting on our products is fantastic. So help yourself, help the Duran. Alex will tell you how to do it.
The Duran shop, you'll find the link in the description box down below, duranshop.com. Alexander Mercouris, thank you very much. Till next time, everybody, take care.